Welcome to Car Con Carne. I'm James Van Alstel, and the weather is gorgeous as I'm recording this. Nice time to think about touching up the house, repairing some damage, getting it ready for spring and summer. You should talk to my guys at Suburban Roofing and Siding. They're a family-owned company that provides interior and exterior home remodeling services throughout the Chicago area. Suburbs, definitely. Chicago. Give them a call. Their staff has more than 40 years of collective experience. Roofing, siding, windows, gutters, whatever you need, you should call their friendly team and get started today. 224-677-6149 is their number. 224-677-6149 or visit suburbanroofingandsiding.com. Car Con Carne also sponsored by this handsome paperback book. It is 90 Days in the 90s, written by my friend Andy Fry. It is a trip back in time to the 1990s in Chicago. What a time that was. What a time for music and pop culture. Well, here's the thing. Darby owns a record store in the book, and she gets to go back in time to that era in our history, Chicago in the 90s. And she's left with the question of, does she want to go back afterwards? Would you? Read the book. If you live in Chicago, if you love music, you'll find a lot of this that's familiar and a lot of this that you'll love. 90 Days in the 90s, go to 90daysinthe90s.com or get the book on Amazon. Right now, Doc's thinking, I'm only doing network television from now on. Had enough of podcasts. There. That's where we're going to leave it. And it is Car Con Carne. I have pulled into a studio lot. I pulled into the Motion Source studio. My guests today are the documentarians and the star of an upcoming documentary, Ghostlord and the Quest for Dark Presence. It's currently kickstarting. The Kickstarter wraps up on April 28th. If you're watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube, to my right, that man is the creator of the game we're going to be talking about. He is Doc Mack. He owns Galloping Ghost in Brookfield. He is a member of the International Video Game Hall of Fame. Sweet. In the back seat, it is Craig Bass. He's the co-founder of the aforementioned Motion Source production company. He is making his film debut with Ghostlord and the Quest for Dark Presence. According to his bio, he also likes cats, Shakespeare, naps, desserts, the movie Labyrinth.
I love the movie Labyrinth, and I don't just like cats. I love cats.
Underground versus When the World Falls Down.
Oh, Underground easily.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And to Craig's left, if you're watching, that is Lydia Koranda. She is a producer on the documentary, again, Ghostlord and the Quest for Dark Presence. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. This is delightful to get us all together in a car, in a production lot. We're not actually eating, but it's cool to actually be here kind of on set where things happen. Doc, we're going to start with you. This movie is all about this, dare I say, quixotic journey to get this game made. Is that a fair word choice?
I believe so. So we have been working on Dark Presence, a video game that we've wanted to do for closing in on 30 years. And Craig had talked to somebody that we had filmed with and kind of got a little bit more information on it, and then approached me about doing a documentary as to why it would possibly take 30 years to do a video game.
Well, who's done anything for 30 years? Like, who keeps the same job for 30 years? Who keeps that kind of focus?
It's led to being a very difficult way of living in the fact that nothing changes significantly. Things keep getting added, but the base of my life has been the same. So it's all just a big blur.
And when we talk about making a video game, we're not talking about an online thing. We're talking like a full-on, old school, like you'd find at Galloping Ghost, console game.
Yeah, an actual arcade game. The arcades are what inspired me to want to get into game design, and that kind of just led me into learning everything about making games and computer hardware and music and graphics and internet stuff, and it's led me down many paths.
So what is the game? What's the vision?
It's a 2D one-on-one fighting game that uses live actors digitized as the characters instead of more commonly, especially now, games are all 3D. So when we had started this in the 90s, everything
In the 90s.
In the
Again,
90s.
30 years.
30 years. It all started. There wasn't 3D games back when
Yeah.
we started this, so it really spawned from. We didn't have a art department and couldn't do sprite art, and it was like, well, how are we going to make these
What's sprite
characters?
art?
Basically, like any drawn pixel-based character
Okay.
would be a sprite. So this was a good way for us to make our characters, and it was something that Mortal Kombat did in their first 3 games, and a few other very special games out there would opt to go with digitized artwork.
I guess the question is, why does this take 30 years?
Wait, don't give the film away. Spoiler alert.
It's not a short answer. It's not a short answer. But over the years, it's just been one thing leading to the next, and we've had a couple of reboots, and then along the way, we kind of re-looked at the industry and decided that it needed kind of a restart. So we opened up the Galloping Ghost arcade, which kind of put in a 7 or 8 year hiatus on the game.
And this was like 12 years ago you opened Galloping Ghost?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that was a big detour. We had just finished filming and we're working on post-production, and then the arcade opened. And we kept working on the game all along, but all of our production guys had to work the arcade then. So it was kind of a big sidestep for the bigger picture of seeing what had happened to the arcade scene and trying to get that back on track as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is there an appetite for arcade games in the present day?
Well, it kind of depends on how you're looking at it.
I mean, I'm asking you, if I ask you, the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like arcades are, they're an incredible place. It's for years and years and decades watching them close left and right. It was just sad to see, and for us especially, as we're trying to release a game for the arcades, and it's like, oh, our place to release it is getting smaller and smaller. So we wanted a way to kind of turn that around and prove that arcades were still relevant and a viable business model. And we did it very quickly. We started helping other arcades open, and it was a great thing. I get to see 80,000 people happy a year go through the place, and it's been an incredible thing. And to see other arcades open up all over the world based on what we did there
That's
been
awesome.
amazing. It's been amazing.
So I use the word quixotic because I know this has been an atypical journey to get to where you are today. Craig, as a documentarian, as a storyteller, I've got to imagine the appeal of telling Doc's story, the appeal to telling the story of this game. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yeah, for sure. It's not. The game's a fun game. I mean, and I'm not a huge fighting game player, right? So I approach it very casually. I've played the current build of the game many times. It's a fun game. For me, though, the story of, like, Doc's journey, that's what's been interesting. When I first heard about, I run this production company, Motion Source. One of our clients was having a Christmas party, and I was at that Christmas party, bored out of my mind, and started talking to this girl. And she had told me, Doc alluded to this earlier. She said somehow she mentioned she being in a video game when she was in her late teens. She's probably in her 30s at this point. And I go, what do you mean you were in a video game? So, well, like the old Mortal Kombat games where it's live action, and they film you, and then they, on a green screen, they take the green screen out and you're in the game. And I said, where were you doing this? She said, Brookfield. And I'm like, there's no way there's ever been another studio in Brookfield. In my mind, it's not really like a bustling production hub over here.
Yet.
And I said, who was doing the game? And she said, Doc Mack. And I usually tell this story when Doc isn't here. So now the good part of that is you can see Doc. Doc has a very distinct, look. So I'd seen him. I knew Galloping Ghost. I'd been to Galloping Ghost. My former business partner used to live literally directly across the street from Doc. So I'd seen just Doc in passing, and I'm like, okay, that guy looks interesting. And he drives the black Corvette with the Ghostlord license plate, and that was intriguing. And I'm like, who is this guy, right? So when she tells me this is the guy that's been that was making a video game with her when she was a young girl, and put her in a crazy outfit on a green screen in an abandoned warehouse with a spiky weapon.
That tracks.
Yeah, I couldn't not. I like looking behind the curtain. Sometimes that's a bad thing. It takes you to bad places, but I had to know what was going on. It did take me 4 or 5 years until I approached Doc. There was just a lot of other things going on at the time, and I kind of filed it away. And then Lydia and I were driving past the arcade one day, and in my head I'd always thought, Galloping Ghost is in our neighborhood. It's an awesome place. I do a lot of music videos and stuff. Maybe one day I'll do a music video there. I'll utilize it somehow. Hadn't happened. And we're driving by one day, and there's this massive film crew outside. I mean, the Ogden Avenue is just lined with huge production lights. There's semis down the street. And I have this primitive reaction. This is my town. What do the big boys think they're doing here? I was going to do something at Galloping Ghost. I went, what the? And I'm like, Lydia, somehow you're friends with Doc on Facebook, even though you've never met him, because you're friends with everybody on Facebook.
I've been to the arcade since they opened.
Right, but had you ever met Doc?
That's the most hipster thing we'll hear tonight, by the way.
What? I was at the arcade first night.
Yeah. No, you weren't.
No, I was there first night.
You were there the opening night?
Yeah.
Okay, you've never told me that before.
I'm pretty sure it's come up in kind of.
Interesting. So I'll have to interview you for the film then. So I had that caveman reaction. I told Lydia, just contact Doc. I want to talk to him. I want to hear what happened to the game. I assumed the game was done, and I didn't know anything about it, So Doc agreed to meet. We met a few days later, I think, and when you walk into the offices there, I describe it as you're kind of in this arcade graveyard when you first come in. There's just pieces of machines everywhere. Then you go down.
That's what I would hope.
That's
what I would want it to
It's what
be.
you hope it would be. So you wade through the arcade graveyard, and then you hit this hallway that's just lined with, Doc, maybe there's probably 100 weapons on the wall.
Something.
The longest katana I've ever seen, spears, hammer, rope darts, everything you can imagine. And then you turn into Doc's office, and, Doc being one of the, and I'm sorry if this is incorrect, you can correct me here, Doc, but I think probably one of the most prolific Godzilla model collectors in the world. You've got hundreds of Godzilla models there, even more boxes of unbuilt models. You've got 30 guitars mounted to the wall. And I immediately was like,
how have we never met before?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I just thought, this guy's cool. This is neat. And then I thought, he's going to suck. You know what I mean? He's not gonna be.
I didn't know that's what you thought.
No, I'm admitting.
You mean never meet your idols, that kind of thing?
Right. I'm he's gonna be a jerk. You know what I mean? He's got this huge arcade. He's got all this cool stuff. And then we sat down and we talked for 3 or 4 hours.
It was 3 hours.
It was just we clicked. You know what I mean? He's such an awesome guy. He's such a nice guy, and it's weird to say it in front of him, but everybody will tell you that. He's super generous, super wonderful guy. And we're only 5 years apart. So a lot of this stuff that he had lining the walls, this was stuff, I played guitar. I wanted to be a kung fu, my dream was to be the American Jackie Chan. I loved video games. There was so much there that I could relate to. And I think that helped me feel, connected sort of to him right away. And then,
you know what I credit Doc for?
What's that?
He reintroduced me to Quicks when I went to Galloping Ghost. The game where you have to draw boxes and you have to outrun a fuse that goes around the lines. I loved that as a kid.
How good is that game?
How good is that game? That's a lost classic. Sorry, Craig. Continue.
No, that's okay. That's kind of my story. That was the origin of it for me. We talked for about 3 hours that night, and when Doc told me everything, encapsulated.
A very abridged version.
An abridged version of everything. I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting. It's an interesting story. And that's where I start with everything. Just is the story interesting? This is an interesting story. I would easily watch 90 minutes of this, and so will many other people.
Well, it's funny, Craig, when we first met, you were telling me about the vision for this documentary. And I thought, there are 2 different tracks you could go down and have it be a complete documentary. You could chronicle Galloping Ghost on its own. You can do a documentary without even addressing the game that Doc's working on.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting doc on its own. The game could be a doc all its own. Put the 2 together and you almost have too much content for one documentary.
Well, it's definitely, I talked to one distributor already that I'd been put in touch with just casually, and they had told me when you get a little bit further along and you have a trailer, which we have now.
It's awesome.
Thank you. And come back and pitch us the doc, but we want you to pitch it as a 3-episode.
Which makes sense.
It definitely makes sense because most doc content now are limited series. I mean, the streaming platforms want to keep people on them, so they'd rather buy 3, 4, 5 hours of content. And I've always said, that's fine. We'll have to figure that out pretty soon because either we're cutting 90 minutes or 120 minutes or we're cutting 4 hours or whatever it is. So I think you could probably segment this story pretty easily into three episodes. I can't say what it's going to be for sure. Right now, the plan is a film. But we'll see. And I think, yes, Galloping Ghost is an interesting story. It's a very interesting story. You could in no way tell that story without telling the story of Dark Presence. And what people don't realize, they know the arcade. And Doc's known globally. But a lot of people don't realize that the ground out of which all of this sprung is the game he's been working on since he was 17. His passion for creating games. And that is where it all begins. So you couldn't chronicle Galloping Ghost without starting back when he's 17 years old and he's deciding, I'm going to do this, do the thing I love.
So again, this is currently funding on Kickstarter, Ghostlord and the Quest for Dark Presence. Just hearing what Craig's saying, like I've got a pretty clear vision on what you were like growing up. Because, I mean, we all knew a Doc in some way, shape, or form. Correct me if I'm wrong, you were a guy who was never going to work an office job. You were never going to be in a cubicle 9 to 5.
No. It was from a very, very young age. I knew I wanted to work in video games. I knew I wanted to make video games. And that was always the course. It was, I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew where I had to end up.
Weirdly, though, I've never met a man who loved working retail as much as Doc did.
I missed the days.
What was the game that hooked you in? As a young Doc,
I was playing Pong.
That's the most hipster thing. I go all
that's where it started, and then Atari 2600, and
were you
I
a
remember
Pitfall guy?
Love Pitfall.
Yeah.
Love Pitfall.
Such a hard game.
What?
Absurdly hard.
Absurdly.
They wanted quarters. It was when they did Pitfall 2 on the arcade. All the arcade games were about taking your money, so they had to be difficult. And I remember playing Asteroids. It was the first game I played in the arcade, and just being out and playing that was just so memorable to me.
One of the things I love about arcade games, and I'm assuming you feel the same way, is the social aspect. Yes, you can be social, you can game online, you can talk to people with headsets, you can communicate, but just the physical presence of being together and playing together. I mean, there's nothing like that.
It was, for me, I lived in arcades, and it was the most antisocial thing in the world. Like, I did not like being around people. I was very antisocial.
So you didn't go with like a group of guys and...
No.
Okay.
It was a very solitary thing.
Got it. Okay.
Occasionally I would go with my family, but once the arcade opened, I see it in that light now, and it's such an amazing thing to see families connecting, and that was a strong thing for me. Was me and my dad, or me and my brother, or all three of us would go, and that was like where we would want to go. And to see that in other families do that in like 2023 is a crazy thing.
Well, and I've got a story along those lines. I had a milestone birthday 3 years ago, 30. And my birthday falls on Thanksgiving every now and then. I've never been a Thanksgiving guy. Don't like turkey. Don't like the stuffing. Not a big fan. And my family was planning something for Thanksgiving, and there was a lot of downtime, and it was my birthday, and I was kind of bummed. Inexplicably, Galloping Ghost was open on Thanksgiving. So I took my son to Galloping Ghost on Thanksgiving Day, had the best time of my life, because I was exposing him to things like Quicks, and like the old Superman arcade game, and all the old like WWF stuff. All these things we haven't seen in years. And to your point, like being able to expose children and like future generations to the stuff we came up on, it's the greatest thing in the world.
That is literally why we're open every holiday. It was the Arcade by Me used to be open on Thanksgiving, and me, my dad, and my brother would all go. And like those are the fondest memories of all of us. Like I'd do stuff with my dad, I'd do stuff with my brother, but that was like the thing that we would all do together. And it was like the most memorable times for me. And when we announced, we've always been open every single day, every holiday. And when we initially started doing it, people were like, well, how can you make people work on holidays and stuff? And it's like because of what I went through on my childhood of how amazing arcades were and how it brought families together. And that's the stuff that's so memorable. And that's really what perpetuates arcades moving forward. And so that was always a definite thing. We were going to be open every holiday.
Now, here's the thing, though. Galloping Ghost is kind of like going into a casino. When you go into a casino in Vegas, there are no windows, there are no clocks. Next thing you know, you walk in at 10 a.m., it's 10 o'clock at night. What have I done? Where am I? Is my family, do they wonder where I've been? Same thing with Galloping Ghost. Like, suddenly it's 3 hours later, and like I've skipped a meal. Like, I have no concept of space or time anymore.
Time gets lost.
It does.
Is it 1980? Is it? It's
So
timeless.
the game, the journey to the game. You talked about filming actors in Brookfield, walls of weapons. One of the things that makes this documentary so interesting to me, again, currently on Kickstarter till the 28th, is all the absurd twists and turns that this game has taken along the way. Perhaps you could share one without spoiling what will be in the documentary, and talk about the journey. And both of you, Craig, as you're doing interviews for this, Lydia, Doc.
Yeah, it's been like all of it has just been the next thing happening. It's the arcade, as big as it is it's a worldwide recognition. That was honestly just a whim of all of it. It was like, yeah, okay, well, I knew I wanted to open an arcade, but everything just kind of lined up, and it just opened. And each time something like that happens, like we don't want to just overlook an opportunity, but the crazy thing is we keep getting so many opportunities. So it's, whether it's been the gym and martial arts school or the printing company, or it just keeps evolving and getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
And for people listening or watching, the gym and martial arts school is what?
So the Galloping Ghost Gamma is our gym and martial arts school that we own and operate, and it had its foundation with the Mortal Kombat actors, because we kind of would have them at the arcade all the time, and we started doing shows with them. And we were out in New Jersey one night, and it's Daniel Pacino, who played Johnny Cage, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Brian Colin, the guy who made Rampage, Jeff Lee, the guy who made Qbert, John Parrish, who was Jax in Mortal Kombat 2, and Dr. Philip Ahn, who was Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat 2. And it's 2 a.m, and we're all just talking, and the MK guys are going on about how it's great to be back around their fans, and they want to do more stuff. What else can we do? And it just kind of got thrown out there. We should open up a martial arts school. Them knowing I'm been in martial arts my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and Daniel Pacino running martial arts school, Philip being a Taekwondo master, and John Parrish being a personal trainer. It's like, oh yeah, we should open up a gym and martial arts school. And then a month later, it's like, hey, I got us a building. Do you guys really want to open this? And
What I'm learning about you, what I'm getting the sense of, is you're not really necessarily a business plan guy. You're like, if something strikes you, if the muse hits, you're going for it.
oh yeah, it's like just I want to do cool, fun stuff with people that I think are cool and fun. And
That's an inspiration right there. I mean, it sounds so basic and so elementary to hear you say it. How many people don't let themselves do that? I have people that I don't get. I don't get it. I don't know why everybody isn't quitting their jobs.
Because
and
somebody's
going.
got to pick up garbage. No, but I liken it.
I like that too. I do that all throughout.
Well, it's
Brookfield.
weird. I alluded to this earlier. That is true. You do that and wash the windows. And I alluded to this earlier, but and I chiming in because I've basically chronicled Doc's entire life here. He used to work at Babbage's, which was of course a video game store, computer game store, and like the way he talks about working there, I hated working retail. Even I worked at a specialty DVD store, and I'm a film guy. There were aspects of it I loved, but in general, I did the minimal amount of work and spent the most time possible hanging out with my coworkers and doing this. But Doc, when he talks about Babbage's, the pride he had, how much he loved retail, turning the store around, becoming, manager and all of this, it's crazy, and I think he just kind of loves everything he done. And the whole thing of the philosophy of what he's talking about now always reminded me, and I think this is one reason the story clicked with me. When you're a kid, at least when I was a kid, everything I liked to do, I would then do that thing. So if I liked music, I would start writing songs. When we were really little, we loved video games, so we came up with a system called the Sonic system. We drew what it would look like, and then we would come up with games, and we would draw the characters and the levels. And we loved comics, so we created Intense Comics, and we'd just fold, computer paper in half and draw comics. And my best friend Steven always says, nobody tells a kid to draw. Kids just draw. It's just something that they do, they create. Somewhere along the line, whether it's beaten out of us or we mature cognitively and start to feel this, self-awareness that maybe holds us back, we start to abandon some of these things. And I think what drew me to Doc as well was exactly what you guys are talking about right now. It was, I like video games, so I'll make one.
Yeah.
I like arcades, I'll make one. I like martial arts, I'll make a martial arts studio. I like Godzilla models, so I'm going to start Galloping Ghost Kaiju Kobo and work with a sculptor in Thailand, and then we'll 3D print the sculpts, and then we'll get limited molds made, and we'll sell Godzilla models in Tokyo. It's like
That's a thing.
Right.
Right.
That, I didn't just invent.
I didn't just invent that out of thin air. So, that's sort of the ideal. And as much as Doc's the man in black, and I think maybe his look could be interpreted as, I don't know, gloomy by some people. He's like the happiest person I know.
Black is very slimming.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't need it. He's ripped too. But it's he's like the happiest person I know. He always says, to basically paraphrase what you've said to me multiple times, Doc, is just like, who gets to do this? Who gets to, spend their days working on a game, playing video games, writing music? Obviously there's business tasks that he has to take care of and stuff. But I think that that idea of carving a place out of the world itself that fits you and the things you love, that this is something I tell a lot of people. It's actually influenced my own approach. I started doing video production because I wanted to be a filmmaker, and it was either continue to be a waiter to pay my bills, or I could start making corporate and commercial videos and pay my bills. And then that sort of, and I guess it's kind of like the arcade for Doc, that starts to kind of consume you, and you don't have as much time to apply to the core dream.
Yeah.
So most of my creativity had to be in short spurts. So it was music videos, short films, and stuff like that. Then we kind of just fell into making this feature. And then in making it and talking to Doc, I was so inspired by the, just like put all the chips in the middle of the table. He's just like, fuck it. Sorry, I don't know the language.
It's all good.
I'll just make a video game because I want to. And okay, my sister, will you be in the video game? And can your boyfriend do this? And okay, can someone make a costume and I'll build this weapon? And okay, someone's going to give us an abandoned Remax office for 10 days. We'll go live there for 10 days. And
see, this is the stuff I'm asking about. Like, I love this kind of scrappy DIY.
Yeah, the whole story.
Well, the thing he hasn't mentioned is they reshot the game 3 times. They shot it the first time they were so young. Let me see if I can paraphrase
This is why it's
Hold
taken
on.
30 years.
Let me see if I can paraphrase it, because I tell the story constantly, and then Doc can tell me if I got anything wrong. They're super young. He gets everything. The people he can get together to be in the game, he gets together. They get this abandoned Remax office. They set up a bolt of green fabric, and they shoot for 10 days. So then the realization sets in working with the footage for the next year that they don't have everything they need to make a complete game. And remember, this is pre-internet, so like,
well, there's no roadmap.
there's
Like,
no roadmap.
Yeah.
So the
Literally
fact,
just winging it.
when I
Yeah.
when I see footage of like the early builds of the game, it looks rough, but you're like, holy shit! Like, how did these kids
It was
make this
very,
happen?
very impressive. We have some footage of them showing like a little promo of
And
what
that's
they built.
later on, but yeah.
it was very
Wait, so
impressive.
you turned over all this stuff to Craig?
Oh
and
yeah,
Lydia? They're-
yeah.
I've got
it
hundreds.
was-
Yeah, we
Hundreds
have
of tapes.
his entire life chronicled. In
It
our
took me a
office.
while, but I got it all, and I'm logging it. So, they figure out there's stuff they need still, and okay, we got to go back in the studio. So Doc gets another, abandoned storefront, basically, sets up another green screen, and this time it's 4 months in the studio. It's longer.
First time was 10 days. Second
10
time was
days.
4 months.
Second time's 4 months because he realized he needed a lot more than he had, and also there's a whole thing people weren't showing up, and it's not the new fun thing anymore. It's now a burden perhaps to the people around him. So he's living there like full time though, right? So he's just stuck in this gloomy sort of stale building, waiting for people to show up, whether it's going to be 3 a.m. or 6 p.m. to film. Spends 6 months in there. His health tanks,
You said
and
4 months.
4 months, sorry. His health tanks, and he develops, this sort of mystery illness where, he's throwing up like 10 times a day. He has these excruciating headaches, and this will persist for years and years and years and haunt him. But he thinks, I just need to get the game done. This may kill me, whatever this is, but I just need to get the game done. This is the thing I have to
Like,
do.
if you're watching or listening and you're not sold on the Kickstarter at this point, I don't know what else Craig can say.
Well, then, this goes on for 10 years. They film, and they're trying to get the game done. Is that right, Doug? About 10 years between the second and third film?
Yeah.
So for about 10 years, trying to, basically going through a bunch of different programmers, trying to build custom engines, all this. There's a lot of hurdles. Doc has a realization. This is looking dated. HD technology is out now. This isn't cutting it anymore. So it's either scrap the game or redo it. We're going to redo it. Well, hey, we almost got the first game done. We got real close. And in the interim, he'd written like 1,600 pages of story about the characters and the world. Let's do a sequel. We'll do Dark Presence, but then we'll add 15 or so characters, and we'll shoot the sequel simultaneously. Goes about casting people everywhere from Export Jim to Caribou Coffee to students of the Mortal Kombat actors, and spends 4 years now shooting these 2 games as complete, in the most thorough sense that he ever has. And then is able to leave that experience and start working in post. Let's really get these games done now. But wasn't it? It had to be right at the end of the studio that you pretty much started the arcade right out of the studio.
It was. We were working. A bunch of us were just working at a home office, just green screening, and it just the arcade again. It just kind of everything lined up, and it's like, oh well. We're going to open this arcade right now, but it shouldn't affect production at all. The game will still be out soon.
I think the thing that amazes me the most is just this spirit of winging it. Like, we're just going to figure this shit out.
Oh, yeah. There's never a plan. It's always just...
Hence the nearly 30 years. No.
Hey, but this is like...
But it always works, I feel like, for you. And that's what people will say. People have told me Doc's the luckiest man in the world. It always just works. And Doc would tell me stories about, I was so broke living in the studio, I didn't have any cash, and I would, go to get a scratch off at 7-Eleven and win. I mean, isn't this... You were winning like multiple... Like every night you would win the lottery.
I would win lottery tickets every night. It was so crazy how, no matter, like, things were bad. I remember this time me and a friend went to a parking lot, and there was just money blowing around the parking lot.
It's like one of those machines, like those booths you walk in, and
all but.
You said it was like $600.
It was $600 in cash, just blowing around Toys R Us parking lot in North Riverside.
So I'll ask the question, which you can't answer. Will this game be finished? And if
Yes.
so, will it be finished before the documentary's out?
Who knows? It's the race is on. I know there's still people that Craig wants to interview, and I know how time gets away from you. So Maybe.
I mean, it would be a
I
plot.
always-
It would be a plot twist if it took you 30 years to make the documentary.
Oh,
That would be
absolutely.
problematic for me because there's a lot of other ideas. And I mean, Doc's the same thing. He has a
Yeah.
board in his office with a list of game ideas. So, and he has released already another game that he collaborated with Brian Cullen, the creative Rampage, on, and that's a
That's
fascinating story in its own right.
And that's
And Rampage is the
easy.
gorilla game. Yeah.
and a lizard.
He's smiling when he says that, but it can happen to you, Craig. You don't know. It's-
Well, there was
somebody
this-
might do a documentary on why your documentary takes.
That's right. That'd be really meta.
I did a magazine, not a magazine, a newspaper interview fairly recently, and the way that I got done dirty. The way that my thoughts were closed out at the end, it wasn't phrased in a playful sense. I was like, I definitely don't want this to be my dark presence. And the idea being I don't want it to take 30 years, but it made it sound like I was disparaging the game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this to be like that thing. And then I realized the perils of print. You know what I mean? They take your words out of context. But I do hold that statement true. I don't want this to be my dark presence. Not in the fact of it's not about quality. It's
Yeah.
just about duration. So people, every time somebody interviews, they ask that. What's going to be done first, the game or the film? And I'm like, I don't know. It's the same thing Doc said.
But nobody plans for it to be their dark presence.
That's
No,
right.
it better not be my dark presence.
Doc, how
There's
does
a
it
lot.
feel?
I can't afford for it to be my dark presence.
Doc, hearing your background as kind of a solitary guy, how does it feel to have your story blown up like this? How does it feel to have all these people talking about you and having a movie made about you? Is that a comfortable thing for you?
It's very odd. Like the arcade in general and having the notoriety from the arcade it's all just very, like, I've gotten more comfortable with it. But if, like, I had so much anxiety about anything and everything, from talking to people or having people ask me questions.
You're doing great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It used to. I couldn't sleep. Like, if I would sleep, I would literally crack my teeth from anxiety. So, like, it's been a forced change. It's like I just can't be that guy. It's like that's who I was, and if
You have to be an extroverted introvert. You can be an introvert in real life, but turn it on when you need to.
yeah.
I get that.
But it is worth noting that to your question, like, Doc is pretty well known certainly within the arcade community already. So he's already has to deal with a certain amount of scrutiny or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's people know him. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to talk to him, and there's he's a figure in that pantheon.
So, all right, Lydia and Craig, how many interviews have you done so far for this?
Between 45 and 50.
Yeah, I'd say 50-ish.
Which I was talking to a producer for, I won't say where, but a producer. I was talking to a producer 2 days ago who may or may not be interested in the film for their channel. But she was kind of appalled. Like, people I feel like they're appalled by how many interviews I've conducted. I'm like, I'm
Appalled?
just being thorough. Well, because they think I'm being inefficient. But then I try to remind everyone, like, keep in mind there's 15, 20 people that were in the game throughout the years. There's probably, 3, 4, 5 people that had worked on the game that were very important to its development and just very important figures in Doc's life. Then you've got, 4 or 5 people working on the game now. And then you've got family members, you've got childhood friends. So
we have like industry.
and then we
legends.
needed the industry perspective.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got a lot of, the Mortal Kombat guys and people that have now had relationships, like pretty deep relationships with Doc. So that's why. And I always say some of them may be a line, it may be a thought from this person that's relevant. Somebody I may not use, but wouldn't you rather have it all than
Than having to stretch something that's not so great.
Right.
I totally
so,
get that.
So that's why we have 45 to 50 interviews. And as Doc said, there's probably
There's a handful more.
7 to 10 more. We have 2 next week.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So again, we're recording this on the 13th of April. The Kickstarter goes for another 2 weeks. And once you get funded, because I'm a glass half full kind of person.
Thank you.
Once you get funded, what does that enable you to do? Does that put a little spring in your step? Does that give you the ability to get through things quicker, production time?
Yeah. Well, I've been very transparent about this with everybody because I think it's part of, why do we need the money? I think I put about $60,000 into it. And that's, for me, that's a lot of money.
Out of your pocket. For most
That's-
people, that's...
we don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, so we're not going on vacation or anything, it's just putting
This is vacation.
money.
We're in my car
Yes.
in the studio.
It's
this
fun.
is... Hope you like it,
This is
kids.
fun.
Yeah,
This
hands out of the
is
window.
better for me than a beach in Florida, honestly. But most of the resources that I've been able to put in, which is a decent amount, are about to be exhausted. So
Sure.
we knew, we need to get the community or whomever, somebody involved to help move things along. The film will get made no matter what. There's a lot of things we still want to do, and I think some creative and interesting ways to bring the story to life, to resurrect the past. You and I have talked about things before. So that money will help with that. So for us, it'll definitely expedite that next phase of the thing. Either way that it's getting done. I've never put so much time into anything in my life. For like a year and a half, Doc and I would meet like twice a week. We'd spend like 3, 4, 5 hours together a week, and I'd just be taking notes. And I have 500 pages of notes that I've organized. And
It's official biography.
right, like I sometimes think maybe that should have been a Kickstarter stretch goal, is I'll just write the damn autobiography because, we're there. But the story's not over. And even at the end of the film, the story still won't be over because, as you can tell, like there's always something new around the corner, which I think is fun because then after you watch the movie, you can go and it's like, well, now Doc started his own airline or whatever, is going to happen. So yeah, it'll definitely help us finish off production. We have the ability, having a studio, to cut a lot of costs that other people would have to
Sure.
deal with. We own our own gear, so we're not spending $600 to $1,000 a day on gear rentals every time we shoot. We have a studio when we need studio shoots. We have offices, so we've been able. I've always said, "Hey, we're asking for $60,000. We can do $150,000 worth of work with $60,000 because we've built an infrastructure over the last 15 years. But we need some help to get to where we want to go with this."
Well, for anyone interested in video games, Doc's story, which is fascinating, anyone who's interested in the creative side of things, just where inspiration comes from and how it manifests, anyone who's interested in local stuff, which I am, like the appeals here are many for people to contribute to the Kickstarter, to see this movie. I'm dying to see this made. It will get made. I'm dying to see it, period. I'm dying to see all the details of your story laid out.
I am too.
And so am I.
I've seen how much effort everybody has put into this, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing to reconnect with so many people that they've interviewed, and just seeing the production value of everything so far. And like from the concept of it was like it was an honor to have them think that it was a story worth telling. And then once we started going over like he basically came in the office like, okay, tell me what happened. And it was like a year going through just the history of it all, and then watching them build like the teaser trailer, the actual trailer, and just every step of it has been just such high production value. I can't wait. I know it's in the right hands, so
Clearly.
That's an honor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So the Kickstarter through April 28th, that's the bottom line, that people should contribute. That's
They should. Yes, I would very much enjoy it if they did.
Yes. All right. And before we all go, Galloping Ghost open every day,
every single day.
Ogden Avenue in Brookfield.
Yep.
We should talk about pinball too.
Yes.
I know that's not your first love necessarily. I love pinball. I love that you opened the pinball spot.
We had, I do love pinball. It is a different level than the video side, but we had so many people asking for it, and I had so many favorite pinball machines that I gotta have a place to go play them.
You know, the thing about pinball, it feels substantive. It feels like you're accomplishing something because it's so physical.
It's mechanical.
Yeah.
It's a tangible thing. Like it's a very different creature than the video side of it. And you can't, like, unless you have a machine at your house, you're not going to
Exactly.
do it on your phone or on a computer. So
Craig, you should play the Iron Maiden pinball.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think you
I'm trying to get him to turn a corner on Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Well, I'm just not super familiar with Iron Maiden, so maybe we need to just explore that a little bit more. But I also want to say, we talked about the gym, we talked about the Godzilla modeling, we talked about all this. But if you're having car troubles, please visit Galloping Ghost Automotive on Ogden Avenue.
Wait, that's a
as
thing
well.
too?
That's a thing too. That's where we bring our cars there.
My mechanic's about to retire.
And if you have any printing needs, visit Galloping Ghost Reproductions, just on the other side of the parking lot from Galloping Ghost Arcade.
This is a lesson in brand extension right here.
It's all on the south side of Ogden Avenue.
Yeah.
the cool side of the street.
The
Yeah,
cool side.
within like a 3-block run or a 4-block.
Why aren't you mayor of Brookfield?
I'm thinking about running next year.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm
I
on
was being
the,
facetious.
I didn't know if we were
You
supposed to
silly
talk about
goose,
that or not.
Yeah, I didn't want to spring it on.
Right.
yeah, it's on the list.
I mean, you already kind of are, so it's just a formality at this point.
Yeah,
This is your
would
official
be-
announcement, apparently.
Well, Brookfield has two things. It has the zoo and it has Galloping Ghost. And really,
Basically.
Well, it has
I mean,
Burger
that's-
Antics around the corner.
yeah, but
Yeah.
these are the
Antics
things
is
that
good.
have defined Brookfield as a destination. I mean, and that's the cool thing when you learn more about it. Like Doc could tell you more, but like the creator of Pac-Man came out from Japan, right? To
Toru Watani.
yeah, I mean, it's a destiny. Like we've met so many people that religiously come out multiple times per year. People coming from foreign countries to spend a weekend or a week here.
That's so cool.
Yeah, this is a mecca, for
Arcade people. Yeah.
arcade fans and retro gaming fans.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Support the Kickstarter. Visit Galloping Ghost and all the different brand extensions: the candy store, the car repair, the adult toy shop, all the different things with the Galloping Ghost brand on it on Ogden Avenue. And good luck on your mayoral campaign.
Thank you. Thank you.